Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be looking at the A-18 Hornet, and this is the first in kind of a series of videos we're going to do about this aircraft and also its successor, the good old Super Hornet. And the reason for this is because it was part of a Patreon question and technically in War Thunder going over the next few years, these are the main aircraft to look for. Stuff like the F-15 that we already covered, the F-A-18, of course the F-22, and then the F-35 and all of the vehicles in between, including all of the prototypes and even maybe some of the proposed. The F-A-18 is an interesting one, and in this video we're specifically going to look at its armaments because it is very much a multi-role combat aircraft. Where the F-15 excelled in air superiority, the F-A-18 excelled in doing everything, meaning that it didn't really have a out-and-out best suit, but because it was designed more as a replacement for a lot of different vehicles to kind of unionize the ideas going forward, it was designed to kind of complement the F-14, so the F-14 would do the kind of fighter role and then also the fleet defense role, where the F-A-18 would take the role of the Skyhawk, the Corsair, and the Phantom all at the same time, which is just kind of nuts to think about it. So it was designed with an air-to-air idea ahead of it, also designed with an air-to-ground idea and a destruction of naval idea too. So this really is the jack of all trades, but it isn't the fact that it's a master of none, because it also is a master of some. The vehicle has so much different armaments that it could bring. It is just crazy to think about. So in this video, we'll break them down, and then we will, in future videos, talk about its kind of legacy, since it has been started to be retired for certain nations, but also, at the same time, its overall power, and also change and adaptation that other nations had to do towards it. For a start, this vehicle was used by many others. The USMC, obviously the Marines, got their hands on it. Canada, Finland, Kuwait, Malaysia, Spain, Switzerland, Australia, and also, of course, the United States Navy used this machine. So if you have a look at it in terms of what nations this could be added to, you've pretty much got at least half of them in the game. They could obviously go into America, it could go into Britain in the form of Canada's CF-18B or Australia's version as well. Then you could also stick it in the Swedish tree in the form of Finland, who operated F-18Cs and also Ds, and you could even stick it in the French tree if you wanted under the Switzerland banner, or even the German tech tree if you felt like it too. Spain could be added to technically the USSR or Germany as well, depending on what ties you want to mate, and I'm sure we could find a place for Kuwait and Malaysia too, meaning that at least half of the nations in the game would have access to an F-A-18. And this is how you balance the thing. Just like the F-16, the way that you do it is you just add it to everyone at the same time. Welcome to the future of Top Tier War Thunder. So to start off with, this vehicle was introduced with the Marines in 1983 in America and also in 1984 to the naval forces, and since it is a multi-role vehicle, it gets access to, of course, some sidewinders. The sidewinders themselves, depending on, I suppose, which variant you want to look at, it would have, of course, the all-aspect ones, and since it has a ton of hardpoints with 9 in total, it could carry a massive amount of them. If it really wanted to, this vehicle could carry 10 AIM-9 sidewinders, 2 on the wingtips, and then 8 in double racks on the vehicle. So, if you really wanted to go for that close quarter IR gameplay, you could easily do it. Now, obviously, when it comes to the Sidewinder, we're getting into a point where you are getting some very, very spicy ones, with the AIM-9M recently being added to the F-16. So this vehicle could obviously get the AIM-9L, the AIM-9M, and technically the AIM-9R, which was used in the USN service with it. So the major difference between it is the fact that the detector on the AIM-9R is a focal plane array instead of a standard indium antimonide, which is the same one which is used on the AIM-9L and M, and even the AIM-9Ps, which were also all aspect. So if you're worried about not being able to do air-to-air stuff, you definitely will be able to with this machine. The other thing to also look at is, of course, it has the ASRAM and the AMRAM, which I'm sure many other people are looking forward to. The air-to-air capabilities of this thing are just nuts alongside of its air-to-surface missiles, but if they wanted to try and balance it when it comes to the armaments, they could actually add this thing in, not with its ASRAMs, the short-range air-to-air missile, or the advanced short-range air-to-air missiles, I should say, or even the AMRAMs, the advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles. The vehicle could also carry AIM-7s, so if they really wanted to limit it and not give it stuff like the AMRAMs or even the ASRAMs, they could just go ahead with the good old Sparrows. It also carries the IRISTs, which I always struggle to say. The good old AIM 2000s come in with the vehicle as well. So let's just say everything you can think of when it comes to air-to-air missiles, this vehicle has access to. With its air-to-air capabilities, we should also add technically what its primary weapon is, at least when it comes to the game, and that's the 20mm M61A1 Vulcan. You should know and love it by now. It's the best gun in the game for jet aircraft, and also at the same time, it's the standard issue on pretty much every American vehicle going forward. So it's one of those which you'll see around the place, and at the same time will just generally have a good, high fire rate, high muzzle velocity, be able to do a ton of damage along with the missiles. Now, since we've had a look at the air-to-air missiles, it only makes sense to have a look at the air-to-surface missiles, and this is where it gets crazy when it comes to the vehicle. So the air-to-air ones, it already is pretty nuts, but if you have a look at the air-to-surface ones, you have a bunch of them, which I feel like would just kind of take over the game and make it the ultimate vehicle to play, especially in ground forces. It starts off with the AGM-65 Maverick, which we've seen for a long time, and also seen it used quite effectively for many high-tier vehicles. But since there's not really much point in going into that one, how about we have a look at the next one, the AGM-84. Now this is the SLAM, as it's known, or the SLAM-ER. This is the Standoff Land Attack Missile Expanded Response, which is a fantastic name in my opinion. This was used on the FA-18CD and also the Super Hornet, which we'll go into later, the FA-18EF in a separate video. Basically, this is a missile which doesn't just use the specific stuff that's on board, it also relies on GPS and also infrared imaging for its navigation and also control. It can go after moving targets, it can go after stationary targets, and the idea is to expand the battle kind of theater so you don't have to get in harm's way with the plane itself. The actual operational range of this missile is 270 kilometers, which is just completely crazy when you think about it, and would completely destroy the game pretty quickly if they ever added it. The SLAM is one of those which I'm very much worried about if they ever decide to add it, but then again, it might get the Shrike treatment, and it might not fit into the game. Talking about the Shrikes, the FA-18 actually has access to the more modern one, which is the AGM-88 HARM, the high-speed anti-radiation missile. Now, the idea of an anti-radiation missile is that it locks onto radars and then kind of follows itself in and then hits whatever it has detected. This was kind of popularized in the mid-21st century, and the idea actually worked pretty well. It was obviously developed for larger radar systems, but as time has gone on, especially with stuff like the A-18, depending on what you look for or which variant you look for, the missile can home in on some incredibly small radar signatures to absolutely annihilate it. The other thing about the HARM is it is high speed, as it's talked about, so it can actually go incredibly quickly into the target. And the reason for this is because it has a dual thrust rocket engine, which has a two-stage setup, which means its maximum speed is Mach 2.9. So the time that this is fired and the time that it hits the target will be pretty quick compared to what we've seen before. Then you have, of course, another standoff weapon, which is the AGM-154. This is known as the JSOW, or the Joint Standoff Weapon. This is a glide bomb, and it was actually made between the United States Navy and Air Force. So this was actually added in 1998, so a very much late 20th century setup. And what you see here is a, well, glide bomb, which is designed to kind of just once again increase the battle area. So instead of getting in harm's way with the plane, you can actually hit it from miles away. The low altitude release of this bomb is 22 kilometers, and the high altitude release is 130 kilometers. So you have to be absolutely nowhere near the target to be able to already hit it incredibly accurately. When I was talking about the Shrike and also the other radar homing ones, I should have said the 20th century, not the 21st. My apologies when it comes to that. Then you also have another AGM, which is similar in idea to the many others, the AGM-158, the JASSM, as I like to call it, or the JASSM. This is a joint air-to-surface standoff missile. So this is a low detection standoff air-launched cruise missile, which was developed once again in the 90s, which was incredibly prolific for missile design. Another one where you don't have to be anywhere near the target. Its operational range is 230 miles. It once again uses GPS to be able to guide itself in, and was used on a variety of vehicles, but mainly bombers. Stuff like the B-1 Lancer and the Spirit, and also the B-52. The F-16 was technically able to use this as well, and of course the A-18 Hornet. But this one is a big one. It's a 1,000-pound armor-piercing warhead, which is attached to this and could hit targets without anybody being able to see it. The next one is the Taurus, the KEPD, the 350. This is a air-launched cruise missile as well, and it is very similar, but the main difference is who actually uses it. So this one was used by Germany, Spain, and South Korea, so specifically Spain would be using this. This would actually make it unique to them instead of the other nations. It's another pretty fast missile, but nowhere near stuff like the HARM. Like, it could only go 0.95 is probably the way to put it, and it is in service now with Germany, South Korea, and Spain. Has the same idea as many others, but just has an increased operational range of greater than 500 kilometers, and it just sits pretty high, and then can just sit kind of low and just go into the target from absolutely miles away. And then for its anti-ship capability when it comes to missiles, you of course have the Harpoon. Now the Harpoon is one of those which I feel like is going to eventually bring into the game. Don't know how it's going to fit, but I feel like it's going to be more on naval targets than it is on planes. And I mean the prolific use of it, not just an individual version. It's an all-weather over-the-horizon anti-ship missile, which is once again made by McDonnell Douglas. This one has actually been used since the 70s, and it is a active radar homing missile. So once you fired it, it will be able to guide itself. This is used in the form of the AGM-84 on fixed-wing aircraft, which is the one that's on the F-15, and would mean that you could hit naval targets from absolutely miles away. So even though the missile components are the more interesting thing on the FA-18, it isn't just limited to those. It also has access to Zunis and Hydras, which is something we've obviously seen quite a lot already in the game, and also just a ton of different bombs, including nuclear ordnance, the JDAMs, precision-guided munitions. You also have paveways, Mark 80s, you've got the Gator, the combined effects munition, the sensor-fused weapon, the Rockeye 2, and then also incendiary bombs. You have everything that you would want in terms of armaments. I can't think of a single thing that I would want more than this. The other thing as well is it has a ton of different pods, such as targeting pods that it could have in the vehicle, such as the Lightning, which I believe we already have in the game, so it could just get access to that, meaning that it would have great imagery from height to be able to hit. Now, looking at all of these munitions, it is just crazy and shows how this multi-role fighter idea is going to break War Thunder at some point. Because when munitions take over, which they already have, then planes just become trucks with access to crazy amounts of weaponry. And the FA-18 is that. The FA-18 is exactly that in its total sense. And it's just going to nuke top tier whenever it gets added. No matter how they add it or what they add to it, over time it will get access to more and more modifications, more and more CAS privileges, and it will just nuke everything. It's crazy when you think about it. As always though, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.